Welcome to our first broadcast of 2026. I'm Bertram Souza, veteran Mahoning Valley journalist and host of the Scribbler Video podcast. Today we focus on the crucial midterm elections. A year after taking a giant step toward establishing the imperial presidency, Donald Trump has kicked off 2026 by setting himself up as the de facto leader of the South American nation of Venezuela. Republican Trump, who enters his second year as president, ordered the U.S. armed forces to invade Venezuela and arrested strongman leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. They've been brought to New York to face numerous criminal charges of drug trafficking. In announcing the invasion, Trump told the American people that his administration would oversee the governance of Venezuela for the foreseeable future. That action flies in the face of his campaign promise to disengage America from foreign entanglements and instead focus on an America First agenda. That promise was largely the reason he won the 2024 presidential election. So how will Trump's globalist desires, he's also setting his sights on Colombia and Cuba, affect this year's midterm elections? I'll ask my guests. Dr. William Binning, once an Ohio Republican Party insider, former chairman of the Mahoning County Republican Party, and retired Youngstown State University political science professor. Brent Larkin, the Dean of Ohio Political Reporters, retired director of the Cleveland Plain Dealer's editorial page, and still a Sunday columnist for the newspaper and its web edition. Tom Suddes, retired veteran political reporter of the Plain Dealer, who continues to write a weekly column for the paper. Tom is an assistant professor at Ohio University. Thank you for joining me to talk about the all-important midterm election. But before we get to Ohio politics, let's start with President Trump's takeover of the governance of Venezuela. This certainly flies in the face of his major campaign promise in 2024 of an America First agenda and the disengagement from foreign entanglements. So what's your reaction to this major development, and could it become an issue in the midterm elections? Bill, as our resident Republican, let's go with you first.
Well, I think it's all about oil. It has one of the largest or the largest reserves of oil in the world. And it was nationalized some years ago by the government, and they kicked the American oil companies out.
Yep.
And so now Trump's putting them back in. And it's a 19th century American imperialism in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, there's other reasons, probably good reasons, the drugs and this and that. But I think the reason, my opinion, is it was oil. Which Trump likes oil. He's not into wind or solar. He likes oil. So that's what I think. Now, just to go to the second point, I don't really know. I mean, American liberal elites will be irate, but its effect on the general public in terms of the election, I think it's not going to be an issue. It's not going to be much of an issue in the midterm election. I don't think, unless something happens adversely. I don't really see it as it's an elite issue.
Okay, Brett, what about you?
Non-issue, almost a non-issue, for the reasons Bill outlined, and the people who won't like it will the people who actually believe, the MAGA people who actually believe in what Trump says he believes, and he doesn't, as we know. Right. They don't like this. They won't like this at all, because it does run contrary to everything he says, but so do about 80% of the things he does. And the Washington Post had a quick poll this morning, and it was 42% disagree with what he did, and 40 or 41% agreed. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I paid $109 at Heinen's on Saturday for something that 4 years ago would have cost me maybe $70, that's what people care about. I just don't think it's a big issue.
Tom, even if he has to decides to ultimately send in American troops because of the uncertainty in Venezuela, and even if he has to spend billions of dollars to extract the oil, is it still?
Well, you just changed the
You're changing the question, Bertram.
I know.
Bill, he didn't like the answer.
Yeah, right.
I'll come back to you with that because I want to go to Tom first, and I'll come back with you about spending American dollars and troops. Tom, go ahead.
Well, I think several things. The first is I think it is embarrassing and shameful. The Democrats in Congress have not said much of anything about this. They're obviously such scaredy cats. They don't want to say anything one way or the other, which reflects the fact that I think Bill and Brennan are both correct in that public attention on this. We have the attention span as a population of gerbils on methadone. People's minds flash to something else immediately. Bread and circuses and the rest of it. But I will say this, and I hope it never happens, because of course I had some classmates in high school that were killed in the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
When we start seeing, if it happens, it may never happen. I hope it doesn't happen. We start seeing American young men and women who are in uniform come back in coffins, which may never happen. I hope it doesn't. Then public opinion will change. But meanwhile, I think someone said the gasoline prices are dropping right now. I don't pay attention. I hate to brag that I just don't, but I don't. And I think people are fairly complacent. If it doesn't affect them personally and it's on balance an economic plus, they just will shrug and say, well, that's just Donald being Donald, and they'll sigh and go on to their other business. But again, I think a large part of responsibility for the passive public response is the fact that Democrats, as usual in Congress, are rolling over and playing dead.
Bill, so if American troops have to be sent in and American dollars, billions are being spent, does that change what occurs?
Well, the American dollars part won't change anything.
He already sent troops in. It was I mean, they apparently worked on this for months. They've been engaged in almost the entire American military establishment. So they've already been in there, and apparently, as far as we know, a lot of but I imagine a lot of CIA agents are still there. So I don't. It's hard to foresee how this. Now's the problem. I mean, what's gonna happen? My guess is that they made a deal with this vice president who's been in Venezuelan politics for a long time, and I think they've already cut a deal with her. So if she comes in and she's more or less aligned with the U.S., and I think we'll see the oil companies get their way. Right. I mean, I don't see a military activity.
It seems to me that this has got Rubio's fingerprints all over this, and we can't run everything Donald Trump has tried to run in his entire life, in or out of politics, has turned to shit. So he can't run anything. And there is a little potential for trouble there because the United States isn't capable of running a country that's, a 10-hour plane ride away.
Sure.
Not that far, but you know what I mean.
So last year, Trump took a major step towards establishing the imperial presidency. He did so because the Republican majority in the U.S. House and Senate conceded all power to him and failed to assert Congress as a co-equal branch of government. Will Democrats be able to turn this into a campaign issue? Brent, start with you.
Well, sure. We saw the results of the pre-midterm elections, the last year, November's election, left a lot of fingerprints for problems. We see in polling in Ohio that a year ago I wouldn't have given Amy Acton a snowball's chance to win an election for governor. So the imperial presidency and that word that Trump refuses to use, which is affordability.
Right.
Look, I think we've kind of become immune to his inhumanity and cruelty. And cruelty is the right word. People who voted for him embraced cruelty. And I just find it a sign of America's deterioration. But that's me.
What about you, Bill?
Uh, I'm not sure that the American voter is into balance of power and concern about where the power is, the way you phrased it.
Right.
I do think there is a excellent chance that the Democrats will at least take the House. And with I don't know how big a majority, and then they will assert themselves, at least in investigations
Right.
of different past actions of the imperial presidency, and future actions. So I think that's, but I think, as Brett said, it's not because of they're voting on who has power. It's the affordability issue that he's not going to be able to get out from underneath that. I don't think, and I think it's going to affect them at the polls. It's going to affect the party at the polls. People are going to vote against the Republicans, and the Republicans don't have they have a fairly good chance in the Senate just because of the geography of the Senate to hold on. But I think they're going to lose the House. I would bet on that. Which he lost 40 some seats the last midterm, and every president loses seats in a midterm.
Tom?
Well, I think Bill's right about the federal House of Representatives. I don't think there's a huge question at this point, but of course that's easy to say because this is an administration on the executive side that acts with kind of shock and awe, although it's hard to say what he could do more if it could shock people anymore about anything. I still think, though, that fundamentally, unfortunately, we are people that values convenience and economy in terms of prices more than anything else. And if on the side of fuel prices they stay down or go down, and the claim is made this has been part result of breaking up Venezuela's antiquated production facilities and so forth, that might come across as a plus. But I also think this. I do think that the explosion in costs that many middle class people are going to face because of the being a part of Obamacare health plan expenses is going to really hit a whole swath of people that otherwise maybe, let's say, business oriented but independent professionals and so forth. They'll be very angry about what's going on with that. I also want to not remind, that's very didactic even for me. I also want to point out that I know it's true. It's a bad character fault. That we are facing the danger of 12 to 13 small hospitals in this state and Republican counties shutting down because of the so-called reforms in healthcare policy. And these are all counties where the hospital is an independent hospital. The nearest general tertiary care hospital is 2 or 3 counties away. And this is a bedrock country that should not have these problems arising. And that can easily happen sometime in the next year or so. The number that are operating with very razor thin margins right now of balanced budgets.
Well, and then once again, Ohio, which has become Republican red, is making national headlines because of some polling that shows the race for governor is much closer than many expected, as Brent pointed out. Do you believe that the presumed GOP nominee, Vivek Ramaswamy, who is backed by Trump, will face stiff competition from the presumed Democratic nominee, Dr. Amy Acton? Bill?
Well, I have a theory. Well, first of all, you have the midterm elections, which are going to be adverse to the Republicans, even in Republican states. But my theory is that particularly the Trump vote in the small rural counties is not coming out for Vivek because of his name. They're not going to come out and vote for Amy, but I think they're going to be discouraged. They're going to be unhappy, and they're not going to. I mean, can you imagine in some backwater county a Vivek Ramaswamy yard sign? I can't. I mean, I'm sorry, Bertram, but I know how sensitive you are to these issues.
That
But
is the next
I still think there's people down there that wear sheets, and they're not coming out to vote for Vivek. That's my opinion.
Brent, what about
Well,
Vivek?
Well, he clearly, the base is fragmenting and it's splintering a bit, and Ramaswamy is now embracing normalcy within the party, which is he's distancing himself from the more extremist people. I think he's looking towards the undecided vote in independence by doing that, but there's some concern there. We all kind of know who Jonathan Martin is. He's probably might be the most respected politics writer in the country right now, and he wrote last week, I don't know if you saw it, that Amy Acton's going to be the next governor of Ohio. And I think that's part of what he sees as what Bill has talked about. He sees an even bigger wave coming, and it's too early. We don't know that, but I am still I am surprised she appears to have a fighter's chance in this. I'm at the same time, I'm still kind of skeptical because, you know, they've lost all but one race since 1986, and that happens to be 40 years ago.
Tom, Vivek Ramaswamy in Ohio.
Well, first of all, I think I've not met him. I'm hoping to do so fairly soon. But we tend to forget a little bit because Ohio is a little insular that we have had people of Indian descent elected in South Carolina and in Louisiana as governors. I believe in one of them may have converted to Christianity. Just coincidentally, another retained his or her birth faith as a public life. I think the prospects of people being moved very much by his ethnicity, I mean, moved negatively by his ethnicity is not that great. But I think the people are going to have real questions about whether or not he simply sees the governorship as a stepping stone to running in 2028 for the presidency. That's why, number two, I think it's all important to see. This is usually not a factor because the lieutenant governorship isn't worth much of anything. I don't care what anyone says. But it's going to be important to see who he selects. I think he's going to announce on Wednesday
Yeah, right.
who his running mate is going to be, which has led to some pretty interesting speculation on that front. But I think it's going to have to be seen as someone who's the kind of hands-on man or woman who can step in and take charge and run the government if he's not there anymore. And I may be wrong about that because I may be counting on our Ohioans to be too thoughtful about the process. Certainly, we had one thing I have to say about Republican governors, and I've written it before, is a succession now, beginning with Voinovich especially, of really good financial management in our state government compared to many other states around us of both parties. And upholding that tradition is going to be essential for the next governor because we have not had any real crises that way financially, particularly. And I think that's why the number two person has got to be someone who's got a lot of experience in managing government. But on the other hand, the public bread and circuses, who knows what's going to attract public attention.
I wanted to add one other point to what I think is characteristic of this governor's race is that I know Vivek's trying to get to the center or appear moderate, but the press he gets, which I don't know, going to the Turning Points conference and discussing what a real American is, I don't think that's really all that helpful. It's not something I see Jim Rhodes doing in running for governor of Ohio. So I think Tom might be right. He's trying to be moderate, but I think he's already characterized himself. And I think part of it is driven because he still wants to run for president. And that's part of that is to cultivate that base. But in doing so, seems to me it raises a lot of questions about somebody we really don't know who he is or what he's about and what he's going to do as governor. And those kind of going to those kind of meetings and talking about that kind of stuff, I think that's poison. To me, it's poison in Ohio.
Yeah,
You don't talk about anything in Ohio if you want to.
right. Here's what exactly, and I was going to bring this up, is that here's his explanation for high-tech companies hiring foreign-born and first-generation engineers over native-born Americans. Quote, our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long, at least since the 90s and likely longer. That doesn't start in college, it starts young. And then he goes on to say, a culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champion or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. Should the Democrats keep pounding away at this? Brent?
Well, he said that, yeah, he said that, I don't know, it's been a number of months. And I can say, because what he said there was a lot of truth in what he said.
That's right.
I would, should he have said it? Absolutely, no, probably not. And Bill talked about him going to Turning Point. Did you see what this Nazi, Nick Fuente said about him afterwards? He said, I'm coming for you in Ohio. And now all these crazies on the right in Ohio, they're not going to vote for Amy Acton, but as Bill alluded to, all this chaos on the far right could drive down turnout. And I guess it probably will. But what he said was true, Bertram.
That is true.
Yeah, but politics isn't about truth, is it?
No, it isn't. No.
So, and it also has this stench of arrogance. And, the reason we all go back to when Rhodes was riding high. And the reason that Rhodes, I believe, was successful is he sounded like every man, the man on the street. I mean, he was much more intelligent than actually what he sounded on the campaign trail or when he would meet with the constituents. And that was his, I think that was his talent to understand the voter. And Vivek seems to me to give me the impression that he actually looks down on people who are not of his ilk or his standing. Tom, what do you think?
Well, I'm actually teaching, and I see something of the generational stuff. I think that people don't want to hear bad news, and that's in a way what he was saying in that case was bad news. It may be true, but that's not the difference. That's not the point. I personally don't think it's necessarily true that we aren't having really well-prepared young men and women, independently of anything I say or do. They're there and they're out there. But I think I'm old enough to remember when Sputnik went up in 57 or 58, and we had all these books about why Johnny can't read and why Jimmy can't do math and can't do this, that, and the other thing. American, as a culture, goes through these cycles of being convinced that the schools are not helping anybody, they're wrecking things and so forth. And then they go through, obviously, we have these wonderful kids doing great things, which we do, many of them. But I think politics comes down in Ohio to intangibles. I was thinking earlier, mentioning about issues. Ray Bliss's famous quote about keep issues out of campaigns, which he did say, I believe. I think it's documented. So it comes down to more, and using this word in this neutral sense, more homely things to people, generally speaking. I'm not sure what that would be, but a good example would be, for example, this, in my opinion, what I've read, this bogus business about Somali daycare in Columbus being riddled with corruption and mendacity and so forth, which even the Minnesota examples aren't very compelling.
Right.
Those things they can complain over a bottle of beer at a bar about these GD people, this and this, that, and the other thing. That mobilizes people. I don't think abstractions about whether or not we're getting a good academic achievement per se is going to be enough to make people get excited about voting either way.
So let's turn to the Senate race, the U.S. Senate race, and Sherrod coming back on the scene. Bill, talk to me about this race and what you see happening.
Well, are we going to go back and talk about acting? Aren't we? We haven't. We just talked about Vivek. The governor's race is about two people, but I don't. I'm going to go where you want to go right now. So let me. No, I have a thought. I have a thought on your point, and that is, I think that it's a midterm. Certainly, that's going to help Sherrod's candidacy. I think probably he's better known and knows more people than the current incumbent senator. And I also think that this goes back to the old Rhodes gang. You probably remember Roy Martin, but Roy Martin told me one time the governor pulls the wagon. It doesn't matter what else you think. So that in a lot of ways, Sherrod's future opportunity depends to some extent on how well the Democratic gubernatorial candidate does and how the race shapes up. In other words, if my theory about depressed turnout, which there's going to be a lot of reasons, but I see depressed turnout for Republicans, that's certainly going to play to Sherrod's advantage. I think that but I'll make a transition for everybody, and that is the Democrats have to do something to get some votes. I mean, we can talk all we want about the condition of the how crazy they are, and split up, and candidate has an odd name and says some strange thing. But and so there's opportunity for the Democrats, but they have to figure out where they're going to get some votes, and I think that's I don't know what their approach is going to be on that. So,
and that would
go back to your point. I think Sherrod would like to hear this. I think Sherrod's future depends on Amy Acton's future.
Okay.
I think if she does well or amazingly wins, he wins. If she goes in the tank then he's going to have a harder time. Look what Trump did to him in the last election.
But Amy Acton, a political newcomer, needs a very strong Democratic Party, as you said. I mean, they need a party that brings out the vote. They need a party that's active.
They have to find some votes.
Exactly. So how does she do this? And Brent, does she have the political structure in place? Does she have a team in place that is able to do what Bill has suggested needs to be done, because she's going to be pulling the wagon?
Bill hit the home run there, and I've written this a couple of times. And I'm just pulling a number out of my head, if Amy Acton loses the race for governor by 10 or 12 points, which history tells us is possible, right? Sherrod's going to lose. There is no doubt he will lose. And they know that. And I wonder, is there Sherrod fatigue maybe a little bit out there? He's been on the ballot. He's been on the statewide ballot a whole lot of times.
Since he was 10.
Well, he's not been on the statewide ballot a whole lot of times since 1982, which was a couple of years ago. And I think he's going to have a hard time generating enthusiasm for this campaign. But his people are deeply involved in the Acton campaign. They're essentially running the Acton campaign, and Sherrod's wife endorsed Acton early on, and they kind of nudged Ryan out, and Tim Ryan had waited too long and screwed around too long, and if he would have gotten in the race that late, it would have been an ugly mess, I think. But could she, getting back to Amy and Bill, what's going to happen when he goes after her relentlessly on COVID? And maybe stretches the truth a little bit. What's the governor of Ohio gonna say?
Mm-hmm.
And because you can't rip her, you cannot go after her on COVID without implicating Mike DeWine, can you? You cannot do it.
That's right.
And and they have to be a little careful about that. One reason she quit, and one reason was, you had people with guns parading outside her house, right?
Yeah.
That
Yes.
would be a wake-up call for any of us. Loaded assault weapons outside her house. So,
Uh, Tom,
I should mention loaded weapons outside her house in the same town where the governor's mansion is, Bexley, which is where her
yes,
husband lives.
yes, yes.
I think this. I think that I'm not sure when it's supposed to begin, but as you know, there's a separate criminal trial on state charges starting very soon in Summit County Common Pleas Court about House Bill 6. Now, I
mhm.
don't know if the junior senator,
Hmm.
who was certainly active in dealing with First Energy Corporation over many years, will be called as a witness or be somehow mentioned in testimony, or he may not be. I don't know that. And I also think sometimes the public has gotten kind of satiated, unfortunately, with the idea that scandal in Ohio go arm in arm. So why not just look at this as another blow up in the state house? But if testimony emerges in the state trial in Summit County of the House Bill 6 matter, and the senator is seen as somehow a major player in what happened, that could be very interesting ammunition for the Brown campaign, it seems to me, especially since you're in Northeast Ohio, where the biggest of the Ohio companies, well, I mean, they're headquartered and they take Toledo, Youngstown, Cleveland, Akron as their service territory. It could be an interesting development. I don't know that for a fact, though.
Um, but going back to the Amy Acton, Sherrod Brown, sort of teaming up. There always is in any campaign sort of turf wars as to who's what, and candidates, especially people in the inner circle, don't want outsiders telling them how to run campaigns. So how does Amy Acton sort of deal with the idea that Sherrod Brown's people are going to try and lead her, to success? Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I want to jump in real fast and point out something that Brent has mentioned to me. I'm not sure I was ever able to help him nail it down. But one thing that's different about this campaign, maybe that the two likely candidates, have never run for statewide office before. And I
Yes.
think you had done some research about this, Brent, and found out maybe the last time was a bazillion years ago, which may inflect their way of overseeing their own campaigns. They haven't gone to Wapakoneta and to Geneva on the Lake and to Fort Loramie and so forth, like others have already done when they ran before. And I think the last time, I don't know when it was, but I think it was before the Depression, certainly. And that can make a difference in how a candidate sees her or his campaign playing out. If they've never run before statewide in an office like that, or any office, that can affect their perspective on how things are looking.
Brent?
Uh, I'm not sure. Is there a question?
Yeah.
Tom's right. I think it dates back to the 1800s, Tom, and hey, Amy is, Amy really is there's been a lot of focus on Ramaswamy, and there's been almost no focus on her so far.
Yeah.
Right.
She's held a few, she's held a few jobs since she left state government. I'm not sure if all of those if it went well in all of those places. And we haven't talked about money, but he filed today. He raised $10 million in the last Vivek did 6 months, and if you count PAC money, he's going to have somewhere between. This is a I can't believe I'm saying this number, but somewhere probably between 50 and $70 million to
Mm.
spend on his behalf. She'll be lucky to get to what, 25?
Yeah.
and
Well,
money's good.
I think that depends a little bit on how the national Democrats see the race. Because I'm Republican, but I would think that national Democrats see an opportunity to elect a Democrat and put Democrat machinery in Ohio. I would think there would be a lot of out-of-state investment coming into that race late. I don't know that it would reach the levels you're talking about. I don't think it's. I think she's going to, if she stays within striking distance, and she could do something really stupid. We don't know how she's going to act as a candidate because she's never been a candidate. We've pointed to a few things he's done. This is a joke in part, but right now she's the Vanna White of politics. Everybody loves Vanna because she never says anything, and so we don't know what she thinks, and she can make her the perfect mate for life because she's whatever you want her to be. But sooner or later, Amy's going to have to sort of define herself. I mean, she's gotten away with it so far, and I think that's helpful. I think that's a good thing in politics to be kind of undefined. But she has yet to get it. I mean, there'll be debates. Debates are not that big in Ohio because there's no national media market. But there's going to be opportunities where she could make a big mistake. And we don't know that. So this is really uncertain territory. There's a lot of landmines out there, and we'll see how each of them handle it. So this is going to be an interesting story as it unfolds. But if you want to go back to Bertram's question, and I won't take up any time, but it was pretty obvious to me as somebody looking at it from far distance. Sherrod put the state chairperson in. Sherrod wanted Amy to be the candidate. They put the blocks up on Brian, I think I don't know that she would even be a candidate if it wasn't Sherrod kind of pushing this. So I think she's going to answer your question, Bertram. I think she's going to go along with their game plan. There'll be people, of course, especially if she's going to win. There's going to be a lot of people. Oh, I want to get into this game, and because there's a lot of patronage, jobs, and juice in Ohio politics, so it's going to be a lot of sharp elbows coming. But I think Sherrod's going to be. She's not seeming in any way resistant, and welcomes the Sherrod's gang's influence in this race. So I answered.
Right, you did. And Brent, though, you talked about, sort of maybe people are tired of Sherrod because of all the races he's been in. But there was a time when the Brown name, regardless who the Brown was, carried weight in Ohio politics. Is that still true?
We're going back to Ted and Bill and the Democratic Attorney General. And I don't think, I mean, God, Virgil Brown was nominated statewide by the Republican Party in what year? Somewhere, I think 86 or 82.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it. I would defer to Bill on that, but I don't. It probably means about 10% as much as it did 40 years ago.
I would refer you to Tom's latest column. I think that on lower ballot candidates that a surname, especially in primaries, but even in general elections, I'd like to have that name. I still think it's valuable, but I don't think in a Senate race it's going to really make a difference. But I wouldn't. That doesn't mean I discount it as having value. If I was running for treasurer of Ohio, I'd like to be named Billy Brown.
Mm-hmm. and Tom, Bill referred to your column, and your column talked about how the Democrats were largely and perhaps I'm reading it wrong, were largely ignoring these down ballot races. Is it because the Democratic Party in Ohio is so, scattered right now, or it doesn't have its act together, or is it because they're focusing on the two big races? What do you sense, Tom?
I think they have stars in their eyes when someone mentions Washington, when someone mentions Air Force One, when someone mentions getting White House cufflinks. I guess such things exist. I don't know what the purpose of them would be, and so forth. They've always had, at least going back many years, starry eyes. Not they did not during the Ruvalo Celeste era as much, but since then they have. And I think it's a huge mistake because I don't care what anyone says. When you've got a problem with the BMV, you
Yeah.
can't get your congressman to do a frickin' thing to help you. Sorry, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Or a problem with your Board of Education misstating the millage or something. You're not going to get any action out of Washington. And politics is fundamentally about delivering services in Ohio, it seems to me. And if that emphasis is not there, and you want to do pronouncements about foreign wars and about the world peace and about this, that, and the other thing, go ahead and do it. But don't expect to have the same kind of engagement with the citizen you'd have otherwise. I think that's part of it. And that's one reason why, for the most part, Republicans have been smart enough to put in their line offices people that do, in fact, know how to do the job. Not all of them have.
Mm-hmm.
They have good support. They have a great thing also because when they get someone new coming in, as just to pick names out of the air, Secretary of State or auditor or something, there's this really deep team of young guys and young women who have worked for Republicans in different state house offices at the legislature and so forth. They have a deep pool of people to do that kind of stuff. The Democrats, by focusing on the Senate and on Congress and so forth, let's face it, congressional races in Ohio aren't competitive. I'm sorry, they aren't. Oh, they say they are, blah, 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 but, whatever. And the Senate races are somewhat so, but, it's also interesting to think about this. Who could have imagined that in the time we had Howard Messenbaum, who I admired a great deal, in the Senate that long, we have two people in the Senate that could not be more antithetical to the Howard Messenbaum School of Politics than Senator Husted and our good friend Senator Marino. It's a different world in many ways. But
There's another point to Tom's interest in that, and that is, and I haven't heard this anywhere or seen it. The Democrats are taking interest in the auditor and the Secretary of State because if they were to be so fortunate as to win the governorship in one of those offices, they would be in the driver's seat for this crazy redistricting system that we have. And the Democrats will sing a tire if they win. I'd love to see them win only because of this. I would love to hear what they have to say about gerrymandering if they have control.
Right. Well, there's the famous quote in 1990. It was well known that Speaker Rife had less than no use personally for Senator then Secretary of State Sherrod Brown. And he said so basically. He said, all I want him to do is win. But beyond that, I don't care about him or something like that because of the apportionment board process we then had. But time after time, I mean, how in the world did the Fergusons, father and son, and for a while uncle, hold their offices so long? Because and how did Rose get his? Because being auditor of a state, you find out lots of things about lots of people that people don't want them to know.
Right.
When their offices financially, whose girlfriend or
well, they can investigate you too.
Oh yes, yeah. That's so it's not as glamorous as running around proclaiming National Apple Tree Week or something, but it shows you where the bodies are, and that's so important. But I also have to interject this. When I think about people we've had in some of these offices that were really great people, like Bill Saxby was as Attorney General, frankly, and like uh, um, um, Bill Brown, who knew he was not a member of Mensa but didn't care because he hired those who were, got the job done. But now we have these, I don't know what we have running in both parties, these glamoroso something. I don't know what the deal is with them, frankly. They don't want to do the job. They just want to climb the ladder, climb the ladder, climb the ladder. Well, some people like to stay where they are and do good things, but that breed seems to be behind us now.
Brent, you've looked at the landscape. What do you see?
In terms of, help me, I'm sorry.
Of the lower ballot, the down ballot races?
I think it, in part, the Democrats have fared poorly in these races. Even in 2000, Mary Taylor, I believe, survived what in 2006. But Democrats don't have the money to fund these. This is any of these races, and these people are going to have to go and raise it on their own, and it's become kind of a self-perpetuating thing that you're on your own if you're a Democrat because all our money's going to go into the top of the ticket. 4 years ago, the ticket was far worse, I think, than it's going to be this time. And that's Sherrod dictated who the nominee for governor would be. Um, Hindsight tells you, actually, maybe at the time, in real time, it was clear that maybe John Cranley was a better candidate. He would have lost to Mike DeWine, but uh, this has been Sherrod's party now for how long? At least a couple election cycles, at least 6 years, and things have not gotten even a little bit better in terms of building a ticket and building momentum around it, and more importantly, maybe raising money. So, you know, if 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 Amy Acton wins this time, is she going to carry any of those down ballot races candidates with her? I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to mention something, and we'll see what happens in the Democratic primary. But this one young guy that's running for Secretary of State, this Dr. Hambley from Cincinnati suburbs,
Yep.
is
Yep.
really an impressive guy. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to get you a nomination being impressive. We know that's not the case in Ohio. But there are some younger people there that are trying to turn the ship around a little bit in really dynamic ways. So there are some people there, but I don't know that she could. I also want to mention and interject something which maybe isn't my place, but if Dr. Acton becomes governor of Ohio, she will almost certainly have a Republican legislature to deal with, both the House and the Senate. And if they do a Mitch McConnell versus Barack Obama and say, well, all I want to do is block and stymie this person so she can't get reelected, that's going to be a bad problem for our state because right now our finances are in good condition, wonderful condition actually for states. But if they end up having some kind of caterwauling over budgets and taxation and finances, they'll be like the last couple of years of James A. Rose in constant temporary budgets and so forth, chaos. And that's people don't want to hear that if they can avoid it. So I throw that out there too. But I
And
think the Secretary of State's race is a possible interesting if either nominee, either candidate, Senator, Representative Russo is the other Democrat running for that. But I think that's a possibility. That's a possibility for the
and to your,
Democrats to pick up.
to your point, Tom, Republicans in Columbus and in the General Assembly have shown a willingness to flex their muscle a lot,
Yeah,
not necessarily in the interest
right.
of the public or the interest of the state. And Bill, before we close up, I want to ask you this question. Do the people of Ohio care that Republicans in power in Columbus have literally cut the legs of higher education in this state?
Well, I'm
And,
conflict of interest about that, so I really don't care to say anything about it. But I will say this. I'm proud of the fact that my parents sacrificed Youngstown Sheet and Tube steel worker, stay-at-home mom, to put all five of us through Catholic schools with our own money. And I think the diversion of close to $1 billion this new fiscal year to non-public schools, but particularly religious schools, is an absolute disgrace to what should be our investment in public education. I mean, I teach kids, and I've been very impressed with the kids I've taught. Most all of them are from public schools, but that's because they come from pretty decent suburban districts that people do vote right now for levies. But the diversion of money that way, and again, I should throw in not that I'm a complete sleaze personally, but I am a churchgoer, so I'm not knocking the church as an institution in any way, shape, or form. But that's not our state's obligation. State's obligation is your children and grandchildren who are in public schools, and that's where
right,
the problem really is. Higher ed, Ohio is. Someone did a study. I wish I could find it again. When Lausche was governor, even in the 50s, Ohio undersupported higher education compared to its peer states and what we call the Big Ten states and so forth. Why, I don't know, but maybe it's intellectualism in America, that sort of thing. Who knows? Well, not the football side of it, but otherwise, yes.
Exactly. Well, former Professor Dr. Binning, what do you think about what your party has done to higher education in Ohio?
Well, I think it's well, one, I don't think the public cares, which is your question, but two, I think it was scandalous. I think Senate Bill 1, it's unbelievable that they would pass it in this time in our history. And one of the things that surprised me about it is all due respect to the Ohio State, it is not one of the top public institutions in the country. It is not better. Michigan and California have much better schools. And I would have thought that the muckety mucks in Columbus, in order to protect Ohio State, would have gotten DeWine to veto that bill, because it's going to be harder. I mean, at Youngstown, I don't know that it matters, but it's going to be harder, in my opinion, for the top AI department or whatever to recruit somebody who's world renowned when they have to go through a tenure review and all this and have to send their syllabus to some political hack down in Columbus. I mean, I don't think we really calculated the damage that this is going to do in doing to Ohio. This Senate Bill 1, not just the lack of financial support, which we're used to, and Ohio State doesn't seem to suffer from that. They seem to find other money. But I think that the guts of Senate Bill 1, with all of the, I think it's outrageous and unbelievable that no one even said anything to stop it. I mean, you would think the Republican elites around Columbus would have wanted Ohio State to become stronger and better academically, and it's not going to help them. That's my opinion.
And the governor of the,
as a Notre Dame boy about the Ohio State, I just
go ahead, Brent.
Well, and the governor signed this bill also. A guy who is beyond beyond political punishment at this point. Clearly a lame duck, and he still is as meek as he was 7 years ago in his dealings with the Ohio General Assembly. I take you back to the Dayton shootings and what he promised us back then. And this really pisses me off. He said repeatedly on handing the Haslam $600 million in return for the Haslams helping them beat the redistricting ballot issue, that my position is always, I will support what the local leadership wants. And the two elected officials were against giving the Haslam $600 million, and he signed that too. And he just caves. And I don't understand why he's that way, especially at this point in his career.
I could see him. I could see him bowing to the Haslam. I mean, that's certainly about political contributions, but there were no political. Yes. There was no money behind Senate Bill 1.
Zero.
As far as I could tell. That was just a stupid idea from some wacko senator was he from Northeast Ohio, is it?
Yep. Oh, he's from Lake County.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jerry Serino. He was a commissioner. Yeah. He beat Dan Troy, Tom.
I would never want to comment on the intellectual abilities of a senator who regulates higher education. But I will say, that I kept wondering when this whole drama was going, why Ohio State didn't cut off the football tickets. You know what I'm saying? Because you can always get a football ticket in Columbus if you're a member of the legislature, somehow, some way. There's always some available if you know who to ask, if they're willing to give them to you. Oh, well, even to pay for them. But that didn't seem to happen. I don't know what was going on there either. I just don't know.
And to not understand what this does to the reputation of the state of Ohio, when you have, this sort of negative attitude towards higher education. My God, it's like we're going backwards instead of moving forward. But finally, before we close, I want to talk about Zoran Mamdani. He was born in Uganda. And in fact, his parents, they still have a home in Uganda. And he came here when he was younger, but he was born there. He grew up there, had in fact got married, went back to Uganda to get married. He is now the mayor of New York, a self-described democratic socialist who was a Muslim and took the oath of office with his hand on the Quran. Does that become an issue for the Democratic Party nationally as it attempts to make inroads in the House and Senate races?
I mean, I don't think so. But you know, I've been dwelling on this question about where Amy could find some votes, and she had to look at that campaign because that was phenomenal. The
Yes.
way he stirred up and generated a lot of young voters, people who generally don't vote or are not enthusiastic about voting. But there's got to be some magic in that campaign somewhere, the way he was able to attract new voters, young voters, I'd like to know more about it. But if I was Amy Acton, I'd like to know a lot more about it because I would like to know how you do that. How would you gin up the market around Ohio State to vote like that in the governor's race?
But he did it. He's young, he's charismatic, he's obviously smart as hell and really articulate, but he also embraced a handful of real specific issues in terms of housing, affordable housing, and
Right.
public transportation. And she hasn't done any of those things.
Well, that's what I'm wondering about. That's when I say that the Democrats they got to find some votes. That's what I mean. Where are they going to find some votes? They got to find some people who haven't been voting, or they need to get out and vote a lot, and they need to figure out how to do that. I don't know how to do it.
Well,
I would certainly look at that campaign to figure out. You certainly can't use it. You can't. New York City campaign can't be used in Ohio. But
you've had this enormous drop in turnout in inner cities in Ohio.
Yeah, I think that's a fruitless place to look.
Well, you might be right.
She'll get the black vote, but it's not gonna generate some huge black vote.
It will be a small. And it's been declining since Obama was last on the ballot.
Yeah.
Tom?
One key thing I want to mention real fast about this new mayor is I didn't read up much about that because I just didn't get too much else going on. But number one, he is charismatic in the true sense of the word. He's a very attractive looking man. He is. But secondly, I thought one of his hot button issues was housing.
Yeah.
And I think that's an issue that even in Ohio can apply because of young couples not being able to afford down payments. And because I hear from students all the time about landlord and tenant stuff in the state, I think rental housing is getting out of control and out of reach for a lot of people. I'm thinking a governor who really has a constructive and real, not tokenistic program on housing that's doable could maybe get him or herself a good niche with the voters. But that's just because I thought it seemed to me the guy in New York hit 3 or 4 or 5 compelling issues that affected people on the state. Not a whole smorgasbord of I'm for less utopia or something, but whatever. And I think that made a difference. I think he's an exciting guy. Just watching him as an audience member.
And one of the issues that he did raise, which is sort of came to the forefront because of the holiday season, and I'm sure you all saw the commercials about hunger in America, about the number of children who go hungry. 17 million kids go hungry, and his talk about a public-owned grocery store. it sort of resonated, even though it might seem pie in the sky or whatever. It's one of those issues that seems to sort of attract people's interest. How does that work? And what kind of groceries are going to be in there? Because there's been a big push, these neighborhood stores that sell pop and, sweet soda and potato chips. There's been a big push to have them sell, vegetables and fruit and stuff.
It's not a state issue. It's a long-standing issue in big cities. Food deserts has long been an unanswered issue. I don't know the government. I don't know how they solved the problem, but I wouldn't recommend to Amy that she take that up. But
But you know,
I'm interested in it,
but you know what?
as an issue.
If you talk to college students, you were talking about trying to attract young people the way he did. You talk to college students and see how many of them go to food banks in order to get food, and what happens to them, and especially when they can't go home for vacation for Christmas or whatever, and what they do. It's not easy, and we were all college students, and it's tough. But before we end, so what are each of you looking for in this midterm election? That would give you a sense of how the wind is blowing. Bill, let me start with you.
Well, I want to see how Vivek and Amy move along the path in this campaign, what they say, what they do, what they trip over, what kind of financial support they get. It's not a book that we know what's in it, and so it's going to be very interesting to see how that. And as columnists have pointed out, these are two people who have never run for.
Right.
They didn't even run for councilman. They don't know the basics of political duplicity, and it's going to be fun to watch and see how this goes. So yeah, I think it's going to be a real interesting race to see. I don't know that there's anything that's going to tell us what's going to happen other than polls or money or whatever. But I think it's going to be a great race to watch.
Mm-hmm. Brent?
And I'll be interested to what extent outside forces are going to drag this race along and determine the outcome. I don't think it's going to be 2006 when Sherrod crushed Mike DeWine and Ken Blackwell won a couple counties against a guy who in the Ohio's population centers, nobody knew who Ted Strickland was.
Exactly.
I don't think we're headed in that direction, but Donald Trump, who knows who knows where this country is headed in the next 3 years, let alone Ohio, and that's even more important because, I mean, the wheels could come off this guy at any moment. I was going to raise the issue: is he losing it a little bit mentally? You can make that case that he is, but I'm not answering your question. I'm going somewhere else. But I do think this race will be largely determined by factors outside of those two, unrelated to those two candidates.
Tom?
Two things. The first is I'm curious to see whether or not the Ohio House Democrats can close up by a few votes anyway to make sure they do not give the governor a veto-proof
Right.
I mean, that they don't. Right now, the governor essentially is insulated by the Republican majority in the House. Now, we want, if whoever wins, to have a constructive governorship, but the Democrats need to pick up some more seats in the Ohio House, or it's all just a wasted effort, frankly. They won't get a majority no matter what. The second thing I'm curious about is the extent to which, as the Trump administration runs through the calendar, whether the vice president will take a more active vote directly or role directly hands-on in Ohio Republican politics, because obviously if he's going to be the nominee in 2028, which he may well be, he needs to have his home state totally and solely in his pocket. Otherwise, it just won't sell very well. So I'm curious to see what Vance does as well over the next year or so in dealing with the state political machine.
And yet, this is the same vice president who, first of all, the president himself, it would be, because I've been thinking, would it make a difference if Donald Trump came to Ohio and campaigned for Vivek? However, if you look at Donald Trump's immigration policy, Make America White Again, that flies in the face of Vivek. And secondly, make that America is a Christian nation, and of course the vice president talked about how he hopes that his Hindu wife, and Vivek is a Hindu as well, would become Christian at some point.
Right. Or just rerun the videos of him being at Lordstown.
Beg pardon?
Just we had to rerun the videos of the president being at Lordstown,
Yes. Yeah.
promising everything would come back.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Don't sell your house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a classic. Never forget line.
Yes, right.
I'm going to reopen all the steel mills along the way.
Yeah.
Back to the Mahoning. Jesus, and people bought that. All the Kennedy Democrats became Trump Democrats.
Oh,
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I appreciate it. This is really interesting, and we'll be getting together again during just some time as things play out. But best of luck to all three of you.
Nice seeing everybody again.
Thank you.
yes,
Take
likewise.
care.